Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back into the studio. This week's video is going to be an excerpt from one of my Patreon videos. If you want to support the channel and watch the full video, which is over an hour long, head over to patreon.com/Eirik Arnesen. You'll find a link in the description below. Enjoy. I really want to include that bump of the wrist, which will connect the hand and the forearm together thoroughly. I want the tendons of the fingers to be showing as well, so I'll take some cues from Carpo's Ugolino, as I noticed the tendons on his hand extending up to about the halfway mark on the back of the hand before the bump of the wrist takes over. This is a common mistake, extending the tendons of the fingers further than this, that is. It does depend on the pose as well, of course. If the hand is dorsal flexing, the tendons will appear to be longer, reaching closer to all the way down at the bending wrist. And if the hand is palmar flexing, which is what we have here and what Ugolino's left hand is doing as well, the tendons reach about halfway up the back of the hand before the bump of the wrist appears as the dominating form. I really want some rather intense anatomy in these hands, as well as they are performing an action. They are grabbing the female figure firmly. This means I really want the knuckles to be clear and visible. If you just grab something really hard and your knuckles go white, you can kind of see what I'm after. I want as many forms and as much information to be present as I can manage in this small scale. The hands are an important part of this sculpture, and so there is a valid reason to include a lot of information there in order to draw the eye of whoever is watching this work. Valid reason beyond that, I think hands like this are cool, of course. In order to make the hands seem gnarly and somewhat monstrous, I make sure the thickness varies a lot between where the knuckles are and the sections in between the knuckles. I also make sure that the fingers go from thick to thin, while they undulate in and out in order to get there from the knuckles to the tip of the finger. They do have a slight taper to them towards the tip. While we have a slight perspective in this image, accentuating this effect, we can still see that this idea of tapering is present. This is a general rule of thumb for all extremities, as it helps the eyes of the viewer move over and around your work. So take advantage of the concept of tapering limbs. While it's hardly an exaggeration and present on many of us, I've made the corners of the wrists very angular. This is on purpose and does speak to us about bones sitting close to the surface. One thing I've spoken about in other videos is differentiating between flesh and bone. The wrists are very bony, and treating them slightly more angular only helps solidify this notion. You can see in this diagram how angular they actually are, or what I mean by the wrists being angular. While both sides of the wrists are angular, I've found that in particular the pinky side of the wrist benefits a lot from this approach. Notice also how we have this line from the forearm traveling through the wrist and into the hand. And below that we have this line from the hand traveling from the hand and into the wrist. Overlapping lines at the joint helps tell the story of forms moving in front of one another and forms moving from the forearm to the hand and vice versa. As previously mentioned, this strengthens the feeling of connection, and without this, the two sections, hand and forearm, joined at the joint, simply feels like they're kind of floating next to each other and they're not properly connected. This helps properly connect them. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, consider liking it and subscribing to the channel for more videos. I put out a new video every Thursday, so stay tuned for next week. If you want to support the channel, visit the link to my Patreon page in the description below the video to learn how. Until then, stay creative, and I hope to see you in the next one.